So, I just got to see this brand new horror movie in the year of horror. 2024, it's been one of the best years for horror movies in a very long time. This movie is called Heretic. It's a brand new film from A24, a movie that everybody's been kind of freaking out about. The reviews for this thing are absolutely tremendous, and it became one of my more anticipated films of the end of the year. I finally got to sit down and see it, and I have some thoughts. So, Heretic is about these two Mormon missionaries who end up going to the house of this one guy, this one dude who's a little bit strange, but he has this very strong interest in religion and sort of talking about these girls about their faith. And this conversation that they have with him ends up diving into a very weird sort of horror trap. I guess that's the best way of describing it. It's a movie that's very character and performance driven that ends up turning more into, I don't want to say supernatural, but definitely more of an out there sort of horror concept. It's a film that's reliant on its script and the interesting things it's trying to say about belief, faith, and religion, and what those things actually are and how they relate to us as human beings. And I have a lot of things about this movie that I really enjoyed. First things first, Hugh Grant. Obviously, you've seen the poster or the trailer for this movie. You know this is essentially Hugh Grant's movie. It's his film to shine as being Hugh Grant, an incredible actor. His performance in this movie kind of reminds me of The Menu with Ralph Fiennes, where that was a movie that was really good in its own way, but it was absolutely stolen by Ralph Fiennes' just incredible performance that was just so fun and so interesting and carried the film on its back. This film is very similar. I think you take out Hugh Grant's performance in this movie, I don't know if there's much there, but he is so enigmatic in this movie, charismatic, and he freaking steals every single moment that he's in, especially in these long-winded scenes with these long monologues about religion and faith and belief. You buy into what his character's selling, and that is what makes this film work so much. Hugh Grant is reason alone to see this thing. The other two actors involved, Chloe East and Sophia Thatcher, do a fine enough job. I think Chloe East herself was probably the second best performance here in the film, but those two characters have depth to them, and they have their own layers that need to be uncovered throughout. They're not as sort of one-layered as you think when you first get into the film. One thing I want to warn people about this film is that it's not as chaotic and as much of a thriller as sort of the trailers suggest. The first 30 to 45 minutes of this movie is really just Hugh Grant monologuing about religion, and to me, I found it to be extremely interesting, even if it did feel a little lecture-y. A lot of this movie feels like a lecture, where the directors and the writers here are telling you what they want you to know about their ideas of faith and religion. They're telling you what you want to know. They're telling you what they want you to know and what you want to take away from this movie, which at times, and you know historically if you watch my channel, I get on filmmakers for that. I'm not the biggest fan of that style of writing, where it almost screams at you what they want you to know about this film, the themes of the film, and sometimes this film is very much like that, especially in the first 45 minutes, where they're literally lecturing to each other their beliefs in religion. But I did find the conversation and the writing and the performance of Hugh Grant in those first 45 minutes to be enthralling, even if it wasn't what the movie kind of sold in the trailers. But do not fear, the second half of the movie definitely gets into more of those horror elements, and that's where the film does kind of fall off for me personally. I think the second half of this movie did not work nearly as well as the first. It sort of turns into more of a conventional horror with a little bit of mystery thrown in and a little bit of philosophy, but I don't know if the mystery and the philosophy really carried enough of the horror to make this film work, because the film wants you to be a little bit scared. They want you to feel the tension, and I at no point in this movie felt that suspense and that tension, especially in the second half. And where this film goes ends up being a little bit more predictable and less sort of exciting as I wanted it to be, especially after the first act. And because of that, the second act and the third act of this film just felt a little bit like a drag compared to the great start. There was just something missing about this movie. I wanted it to be so much more, and I thought there was potential at points of this film to be the film that I thought it was going to be based on the reviews, to be this incredibly unique and philosophical movie that has this incredibly cool horror concept. And I feel like the film is just missing that horror concept. It has all of the other layers to work, but when it comes to the concept of what the actual horror element is that these characters are going to experience, it's not as interesting as the original setup. There's one great moment in the film where Hugh Grant has these two doors, and he writes on one door belief and the other door disbelief, and it's sort of this game. Pick which door. One door will maybe lead to your freedom, the other one will lead to something completely different, and there's a mystery element involved, and that whole sequence and the build-up to finding out what's behind the door they choose is brilliant. But the actual truth of everything that comes after that is nowhere near as sort of satisfying as it should be. And I think that's probably the point of the movie. I think that's the point of what they're trying to say, is there is no satisfaction in those beliefs. But I just think there were ideas and ways to make what this film ended up doing a lot more fun, and ways that that horror concept could have worked a little bit better in the second half. So for me, this film just does not work entirely the way that it worked for everybody else, unfortunately. But I will say, if you love Hugh Grant, if you love unique A24 horror movies, if you love sort of the vibe of these small budget philosophical thrillers, Heretic is probably something you will really dig. And yet again, I recommend alone to come see this for Hugh Grant's performance. It is really enthralling, and it's something that you're going to take away from this year. It's one of the better performances of the year so far. I will give Heretic a 3 out of 5. It is a solid movie, but really just not anything special that I'm going to remember past today. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to like this video, subscribe for more notifications. I'll see you in the next one.